Hi, I am Carrie Goldring with the Divorce Lending Association, and I am a certified divorce lending professional, or CDLP. This is part of our divorce literacy series, and today I'm here with Alex Georgoulis, and I wanted him to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he did. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I specialize in filing for Social Security disability. I am a Social Security disability attorney. But what I like to do is help parents file for children that are going through divorce that have a special need child that they have to, you know, figure out the long term of, the care for the child. Um, the biggest concerns that parents don't think of is that obviously during the process of filing for Social Security disability is that does the child or parent qualify? Typically, with a divorce, the typically it's an asset-based program through Social Security with children. So if they are married, obviously that if there is a assets or two income household or just one, the assets exceed the qualifications. Where it's helpful in these situations where a couple is going through divorce, that asset splits in half. So they may be the parent that is having the child who has a lower income status may be able to qualify for these benefits that is important to kind of have because people don't think of that during divorces, unfortunately. And I think a lot of attorneys that are, that are assisting with the divorces, it becomes very transactional, and I think that'd be great for attorney just to kind of if there is a special needs child at home with them under the age of 18 or even over the age of 18, that is a really helpful, basically just a kind of tool that can kind of be reached out to and assist with those types of situations.
So let me make sure I get this right.
Yeah,
So when someone is under 18 and they are special needs, they could potentially get Social Security income looking at the parent's income. Is that correct?
that is correct because child's benefits, if you are under age 18, unfortunately, there is no work credits. They don't have, they've never worked. They're under the age of 18. So what they do is they look at the household income of the parents. That is the only way that clients that have children could apply for SSI or Social Security supplemental income. But the technical aspect of it, before they even look at the disabilities of the child, they must meet the criteria. And because it's state funded, they are the same criteria as Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. They use the same criteria. So typically, if they are trying to file for Social Security disability and they meet the criteria, they typically would be eligible for any type of state assistance too, because they use the same criteria.
So
Now,
if
over the
I
age of 18,
so if I had a
sorry, go on.
couple that was married and they made too much money and they didn't qualify for Social Security and now they're divorced, there's a very good possibility that maybe one of them or both of them could qualify by themselves.
Correct.
Okay, well that's big, right? Because you think you get denied and then you think you're done. So this puts you in a whole nother basket.
Correct. Because what they do is they look at the single actual home. So whatever the spouse is, they're obviously going to be living in separate homes. So they consider that separate incomes, regardless. But they do consider also too, they do consider any child support and they do consider any type of alimony as well. So that does come into play too as well. Um, but at least the income, depending on how much they're getting from their child support, that does come into factor. But it just depends on what their assets are.
So you would be a great person to talk to before child support and spousal support get determined, because if they're missing it by a very small amount, it could make significant difference.
Correct, exactly.
Well, I think that's big. And then how do you determine which parent? Does it matter which parent files for Social Security, or do you have to have so many nights at somebody's home?
It doesn't. They do consider the parent that mostly has um, the care for the child. Meaning, even though you have 50-50 custody, one parent typically has the child 4 out of the 3 days, or a majority of the time.
So not doing 50-50 pillow on the bed, so to speak, is also an important thing when you have a special needs child.
And who's primarily the primary caregiver, I guess you can say, for the child. And typically what I would kind of suggest is, the parent that is less of an income, that has the lesser of the two incomes.
Would Social Security office ever ask for a copy of a divorce decree?
They do not. They basically look at, who has the custodial, I guess you can say, rights of the child, I guess you could say.
So if someone was reviewing tax returns and 1 year, one spouse writes off the child and the next year the other spouse writes off the child, does that cause confusion?
It does not.
Okay.
It's basically where is the child primarily living?
That's wonderful. And I bet a lot of people don't know that. So thank you. And what
Yes. And also too, just to kind of touch up, is that they do require conversations with the other spouse or with the other parent too as well. Because it does come into consideration where, the one spouse, the one parent, I should say, doesn't want the other parent to file or have those types of benefits. So there is communication. There does need to be communication on both parents.
that's wonderful. And then maybe real quick, what about when you have a child who is 18 and over, but obviously still has many needs and dependencies of the parent? Um, how does that work to
So
divorce?
that's a good question too. If their child is 18, or up to, if they're still in high school, up to 19. But if they are, out of school, they're an adult. They still consider them as so there's two actual programs actually, which is actually kind of interesting. One is, they're an adult, they can file on their own. They're still considered the household income. They still have to be considered with that. But there's different ways of kind of approaching certain things. Like, for instance, if the parent pays for all utilities or something like that, I would suggest, getting, and again, there's different ways of going about it, but the main priority is that they actually still look at the household income. So if the parent, regardless if they were living with whoever, they still consider the household income. So it gets a little bit, it's somewhat the same, but it's less, what's the word I'm looking for? It's less involved because now they're an adult. They're not dependent on the parent.
And at some point in time, I would have to assume the parent's income does not come into a play when you have a special needs adult, correct?
Correct. They
Oh,
just look at what type of assets are coming into, like paying for, like the parents paying for the rent or stuff like that. But it's a lot more lenient. And there's like ways around that, but it's definitely a lot easier, I guess you could say, with the income.
so a very good reason why we would need somebody like you, because obviously maneuvering all this is not very simple.
And it's not very easy. And, it can get very confusing with like the different types of rules and regulations. So um, I always recommend getting representation when you anything of those filings.
And I have one last question for you, and then if you want to add something else, special needs trusts. Is there a time frame when you need to like put something like that into place so that income doesn't get looked at by Social Security, or how does that come into play?
Yes. So all types of, if there is assets, it's an asset-based program. So any type of assets that the child or adult has access to at any particular time is a problem for SSI approvals, the technical aspect, because that's an asset. Special needs trust is the way to go when there's any type of annuities, any type of settlements, any type of
I'm thinking of like you save money for college that you're not going to attend anymore, like, you know, something like that, where now you have
correct.
this lump of assets that you're not going to spend where you thought you would.
Correct. So it's definitely that is the only option that is avoidable with doing that. So any trust funds or anything like that, if the child has or young adult has, it's got to be removed into a special needs trust to be eligible for that.
Can they do it right before like they turn 18, or is there a time frame?
I don't. I'm not a probate attorney, so
Okay,
I wills and trusts and stuff like that. So I can't really speak on that stuff. I don't know exactly
different
when.
question.
Yeah, but I do know is that if they are an adult, then the special needs trust does have to be. But if they are under the age of 18 and they do have some type of special needs trust, is not considered because of the fact of they're still considered under the parents' assets anyways. So it makes no difference regardless.
It's just one more confusing thing when you're going through a divorce that you really have to think about. If you have a special needs child, then
Exactly. And then also too, what I wanted to add as well is that there's also a possibility if um one of the parent is already on Social Security disability and the child does become an adult, there is a possibility where they will also qualify for Social Security disability based off of the parents' work credits too as well. So there are some other options too that are important that a lot of people don't realize either. So they make up to, if they're up to 23 or yeah, 23, they can apply for their parents either, if they're on disability or something like that. So there are other options too. So if one person's disabled in this divorce, and there's a child of disability, bells should be ringing.
wow. Well, I think you gave people a lot to think about for sure. And I thank you so much for spending time with me. Um, it was really insightful. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, ask you any questions, thinks they may need your service, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can give me a call at 248-509-0910, and my office is in Troy. They can contact go on my website at gdgroupllc.com. They can fill out a questionnaire there. There's a lot of information that they can receive on my website as well. So that's probably the best way. I do all intake phone calls, and I definitely take a different approach to Social Security disability, where every client is like my only client. So I definitely this is a tough situation to be going through, and I get it. And it's I try to be as available and all questions, anything, even if they're already on it and they have questions, feel free to give me a call.
That's so nice. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the time that you took. I wish I would have dressed a little bit more, but it's okay.
You're
I'm
perfect.
casual. This is a casual type of situation. People are in need for these things, and
So
you know,
true.
I it's definitely an unfortunate situations, but here to help.
Thank you.